welcome to How to Build an Effective Customer Health Model. We're calling this part one of our customer health series because of how popular the topic of health really is. And while today is going to be focusing more about the basic 101 of customer health, in 6 weeks, I'd like to invite you back on October 26th to part two, where we are going to talk about measuring the effectiveness of a customer health model. You'll find the webinar on our website, but I've also included the bit.ly URL to register today. So let me introduce today's speakers. Here with us is Jill Rubin. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at Totango. Jill's going to be defining what is a customer health model, how to build a health model, and the best practices and benefits from a customer health model. And then we are thrilled and honored to have a customer here with us today, Isabelle Rochon. She's the Customer Success Director at iPerceptions. Isabelle's really going to be talking about their approach to customer success, how they built the model, what they learned from it, what did and didn't work, and how they measure health today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and pass it over to Jill. Jill?
Thank you, Christine. Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have everyone and particularly excited to have Isabelle with us. So what is a customer health model? A customer health model is a framework to identify the status of your customers. So are they in good, average, or poor health? And you do that to really determine who needs attention, why they need attention, and the proper course of action that you need to take to address any of the issues. We comprise health models with health scores and health profiles, and it really serves as an early warning system for CSMs or really anyone in the organization to get a handle on how their customer base is doing. So best practices for a health score. Several things really help to define a robust health score. You include several KPIs, key performance indicators, metrics, and other relevant data sources into one comprehensive model to help you understand the overall health. So, for example, if you think about, I think about going to the doctor, and you want to make sure for your annual checkup that you're healthy. So you take a series of blood tests and you look at those scores, and there's a lot to them. And let's say cholesterol is an issue for me. So I may have a cholesterol score of 200, but what does that really mean? So there's a lot of data that goes into deriving that 200 score, and if I have a lot of HDL or good cholesterol, let's say my number is 90 or 100, then my 200 score doesn't look so bad. So I think the beauty of having a robust model is that you can include a lot of relevant data sources that are pertinent to help you making the right decision when looking at your customers. And basically we take the complexity of your customer base and we represent it in a simplified manner. So again, you can have a lot of data sources, but you need to be able to readily understand what that information means. And we percolate that up to a very simple representation. It also needs to be credible. So if you're calculating that half of your customers are green, but in reality 20% are churning or in the danger zone, then your model is not really accurate or credible. And so you need to iterate. And that's the thing about a model or a framework. It's not set in stone, right? These things are changing and you need to really iterate on them. And another important thing is it needs to be actionable. And so that when you look at these numbers, you have an idea of why they are what they are. And indicate the reasons for the change in health status. So for example, when a lot of people use linear health models, you have, let's say, 0 to 100 as your measure, and let's say somebody is 50. Well, is that because they have a lot of service tickets, or do they have, they're not using the application enough? And even if it's a lot of service tickets, it could be people changing passwords or forgetting their passwords, or it actually could be real escalations. And that information is really important in determining what your path of action should be. And today it really needs to be automated, right? So it's great that companies want to try to do this in spreadsheets and they're not really ready for a solution. But the reality is, if you really want to take customer success seriously and have a very robust health model, it should be automated, and you should be able to see things in real time, right? You want to know what's happening at any given point in the day, and so this enables you to do it. So a good health score is basically, it's accurate and predictive, right? So it's reliable, simple to understand, so anyone in the organization or your team or in management can look at it and determine the health of the customers that you have. And then it needs to be actionable, because again, just having numbers doesn't really help unless you really understand what you need to do to change the situation. So you need to make it easy. So what types of things impact customer health? And we've broken this down into, we've got some primary indicators and secondary. And this is by no means, again, set in stone. So obviously a big thing is business outcome. Are people getting the benefits that they expected when they signed up for your product or service? And obviously that's very important. And then are they using the application in a way to really maximize the benefit? So are they logging into the right modules? Are they using the right features? And all of those things roll up into positive engagement. And then are people actually using it? So you may have 50 users that have subscribed, but if only 3 or 4 are using it, that really is an indicator that people either don't get the value or they don't understand how to use the product. Whatever that may be, you need to take actions to address it. And some other indicators could be what we call secondary. Customer satisfaction makes sense, right? You're hearing back from customers whether they like things or don't, or what they like and don't. And your CSMs, they're a phenomenal source of information because they touch customers all the time. And then of course you can look at outstanding issues such as support tickets, or are they paying their bills, right? So if they're late or not paying their bills, that tells you there's something going on. So we kind of bucket these in primary and secondary. That's our way of looking at it. The primary indicators are application-based, and they're objective, right? You know if somebody's using the system, you can see it. You know if they're logging in, you know what features they're using, and you know how many people are doing it. The secondary ones are a little more subjective, but they're also important. So it's up to each company to really look at what combination of inputs makes sense for their business. These are some of the best practices, but again, no way set in stone. It could be 3, it could be 15. Some people have several metrics under business outcomes, and some don't use support or operations or customer satisfaction, whatever the case may be. Again, just kind of a framework. So health score in Totango. We keep it simple, green, yellow, red. So green, continue to drive value. And so I think what people may be, a misperception is, well, if they're green, they're okay and we can just leave them alone. No, you always want to continue to drive value with your customers. You always want to keep engaged. It's just the level of engagement and how you engage. And so green, you look at it, you continue to have your actions, your plan of action, but there's nothing immediate to address. Yellow, there may be some areas of concern, so you want to keep an eye on it, and you want to make sure that nothing changes quickly or dramatically. And then red, obviously, there's a sense of urgency. Something's not right. You need to engage and address it immediately. So, of course, we always like customers to look like the top lady because we like happy customers. That's the goal. Sometimes we'll get a customer, who's screaming into the phone. That's going to happen. We want to try to minimize it, and we want to try to address it very quickly. And so we always want to be keeping it upward momentum. It's all about upward momentum. We want to continue to drive to green, and even if it's green, we want to get greener. And don't forget that after most customers spend their time in what we call the growth stage. So you have onboarding, growth, and other aspects of the journey, but you need to continually interact with your customers during that very long period of them just using the product. So rule number 2, another best practice, we create different health profiles for different segments of our customers. And so what do I mean? So best practices for creating a health profile. So for example, you may group your companies in onboarding and experienced, because the things they do in the onboarding stage are very different than the things they do in growth. And so their behaviors are different, and you can't really measure them equally. So one size does not fit all. No two customers are alike. And so you have to take into consideration that particular issue. Okay, so you can segment your customers based on particular characteristics. I just mentioned the life cycle stage. It could be by product. It could be by type of account, revenue. There's a myriad of factors. Each segment can have its own health definition and score, so you want to make sure that you can measure those segments and determine what their standing is. Each customer should really only be in one segment. That's to really simplify things. And then you should be able to roll up the health of your accounts into one health score for the entire portfolio. And I'll show you in a minute what I mean. That just means that you can get to the detail, but that you can also look at the big picture. And that's great for management, and it could be for team leaders, so that you can really get a handle on how your entire portfolio is doing. So here's an example of a Totango Health Console, which really gives you a comprehensive view of all your accounts. So you can see in the top, that's all my accounts and how they look. So I've got quite a few in red that needs to be addressed. I have a lot in green, which is great. So I've got a little work to do. But below it shows you the various profiles and segments so that I can determine which of those may be in worse shape than others, or what I have to address immediately, or how each of those segments is performing. So again, you get the detail behind it, you get the top level view, and it enables you to drill down and take action. And that's what it's all about. So here's an example of a marketing automation vendor. And so as you can see, the health metrics on the side, I use the same 5 that we talked about before, but again, this is not set in stone. And the health profile, I'm using the same example, onboarding and established. So for business outcomes, for onboarding, we just simply want them to launch their first campaign. That's our metric. And if they're established, we actually want them to be increasing their leads and increasing their open rates. So totally different metrics, but relative for the stage that they're at. Same thing with product usage. Maybe if they're onboarding, it's just that the instance is configured, or they've created their email templates. But if you're established, we want them to have built out those features and be using them on a regular basis. And then in some cases, so for service, support, it may not make sense to measure those metrics in onboarding because you don't have support or service tickets. You're not going yet. And so then we just measure other things. And so this just gives you a snapshot of how you can configure it, and it can be very different depending on the profile of the customers that you're addressing. Okay, so why do we spend a lot of time, money, and resources doing this? This is really the foundation. A robust customer health model is the foundation of successful customer success. And so basically it gives you the understanding of change in health status for all of your accounts in real time. It can help you forecast churn, anticipate likely renewals and potential upsells so you get a better handle on your business, which is always important. Communicates the status clearly with the organization. So again, anybody in the organization can have an understanding of where your customers are at any given point in time, no delays. It enables you to hold CSMs accountable for their portfolio, and that just means that you know that actions need to be taken and they are being taken in a timely manner. And so that is very helpful. And then finally, it drives a clear path to action. So you know what the issues are or potential issues. You've got a clear path to action to resolve them. And the bottom line is you want to increase customer lifetime value. That's what it's all about. And so all of these things address doing that with a robust customer health model. So without further ado, Isabelle's going to go into a little more detail about how they actually thought about implementing their model and what worked and what didn't work. So Isabelle, over to you.
Yep. Thanks for the intro. So as we said before, I work for a company called iPerceptions, and just to give you a little bit more context, we're a voice of customer SaaS company. So a VOC company does online study to help our customers with their digital presence, so optimizing their websites, conversion. We have roughly 100 enterprise clients. We have a team of 6 CSMs and 5 implementation specialists. We have platform and consulting services. So in terms of consulting services, we do anything from analytics to integration and custom implementation. And we have multi-level accounts. So we have the parent account, that's where the license is. And then we have project services at the child level. So for our first approach, it was already mentioned, but we tried. We didn't necessarily succeed the first time around, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Our first approach, we tried to identify churn factors by looking at historical data. So we looked at everybody who had churned in the past couple of years, and we tried to see any correlation between some metrics and different attributes. So we looked at the financial aspect, so the size of the deal, whether they were upsold within the first year, how many survey responses they had collected, so collection in general, self-service projects versus fully managed clients, how long have they been our clients, the life cycle, and their customer satisfaction score. So looking at the metric, we thought that contract size would give us a good indication of the complexity of the account and the time involved to onboard the teams and the project. We're also looking at survey response and collection size because low collection gives us a small sample and it makes it difficult to get good insight. And if you're not getting good insight, you might not be seeing the value in our tool. Also, usage frequency. So how frequently does the user log in is really good indication of platform usage and engagement. And did we upsell them within the first year? Because looking at the previous data, it was the only common data point that we could correlate to renewal. So we created 20 different health profiles for our 100 enterprise clients. We looked at engagement and usage, survey responses collected, fully managed versus self-serve, depth of integration, reporting, and types of services. I think that we didn't look at the big picture, and we ended up having a lot of exception at the client level. So that's why we ended up with 20 different health profiles. So we took a 2-step approach to validate our health model because we wanted to make sure that we were on the right track. So we monitored customer health for a few weeks to see if the health score made sense. And then we asked the CSM team, but also management and sales, to qualify each client as either healthy, neutral, or unhappy. And we compared it with Totango's health. And what were the results? Well, it didn't match. It wasn't even close. It wasn't accurate, it wasn't simple, and I don't think it was actionable either. I think that where we fail is that the data that was going into Totango was definitely accurate, but it didn't accurately predict whether a client would churn or not. And when it's not predictive, it's really hard to make it actionable. So what did we do to fix it? The first thing we did is I asked for help. So we gave a call to our Totango CSM, and they made some really good recommendations. We found that we needed to improve the following. So make sure that the right health metrics were included to make health more accurate and predictive. For example, we were not tracking onboarding time, and I'm sure many of you have read Farm Don't Hunt. I highly recommend it. There's a section in the book about the importance of onboarding, so definitely we realized that this was something that we needed to track, and it has a big impact on client satisfaction. We also simplified our health profile segments because we were definitely over-segmenting. We started with something really basic because it's easier to make it actionable. And then we just ditch our preconceived notions of what was healthy and what wasn't. Sometimes just because a client doesn't complain doesn't mean that they're happy and they're engaged. It just means that they're not complaining. So instead of seeing a client that wasn't complaining as healthy, we looked at every single client, and even the healthy one, we knew we needed to craft a plan. And also we stopped manipulating the data to say what we wanted to say. So when you have a simple health profile, it makes it a lot easier to take action on it. So we made 3 big changes. As I mentioned, we looked at onboarding time, because if there was a delay to launch, it affected the program performance, reporting, and client satisfaction. What we've realized is that onboarding time not only impacts a client satisfaction in the moment, but also long-term, because it makes it more difficult to deliver everything within a year. And because we have license-based contracts, if somebody has a delayed onboarding, they don't have as much time to see the value in what the insights that are getting. So we're also looking at survey responses, again, because low collection makes it difficult to get good insights. And in terms of platform usage, what we decide to do, because we're not segmenting as much, is use specific modules. So we have the Analyze module that we expected our fully serviced clients to look at, because we're doing the setup for them, but we still want them to be engaged and look at their data. And also, project setup is something that we're looking at for clients who are self-serve, because we need them to go in and set up their initial project to start collecting. We're still looking at upsell within the first year, but now we're also looking at integrations, because the deeper the integration with other tools, the stickier we are, and the more valuable the data is to the client. We also reduced the customer health profile from 20 down to 3, so it's a lot easier to look at it and to segment. And we use Totango's enterprise health to calculate and monitor the health of accounts at the parent level, not just for individual projects. So now account managers know the status of each account without having to look into their individual projects. And it also, we're lucky because with Totango we have the health at both levels, so it allows us to better track and make sure that everybody's happy. So this is basically what we're seeing for a specific client, so a Norwegian cruise line, where they currently have 4 projects, and we can see that 3 of them are in really good health, so we're just going to keep on nurturing them, but one of them has average health. So basically, because our health is based on platform engagement as well as collection, what we know for this specific survey is that the client was on vacation, so she hasn't been going in the portal and logging in and looking at the data. So it was easy for us to identify, okay, this is not a client we need to worry about, but also why isn't it in great health? So our new approach, we take 3 steps to validate our customer health model. So the first thing would be we review our client health profile monthly to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. We also analyze the clients that fall into the default category, because if half of your clients are in the default, it probably means that you need to review your segmentation, and there's something that you've missed. And also, when a client churns or we have a difficult renewal, we review the health profile and see is there anything that we've missed? Are there any churn indicators that we need to be mindful of? So what we've learned from the customer health is that it allows us to identify our strengths and weaknesses as a company. It also increased the upsell of new business and overall client satisfaction, because we're definitely more aligned and we know exactly how our clients are doing at any given time. It also helps us identify other factors that impact customer health, such as QBRs, in-person visits, frequency of engagement, and all those things are tracked in touch points and workflows in Totango. So we're able to look back and see what worked and what hasn't. So our key takeaways would definitely be to keep it simple, to identify our churn indicators and use Totango to flag any potential issues. We are definitely big users and huge fan of the segments in Totango. And the great thing is that with segments, you're able to create on entry alert and react quickly. So you can be very proactive and nurture your clients. We also continually optimize simply because our clients' needs change. I mean, the landscape is changing and we need to evolve with our clients. And lastly, I would say client health needs to be a company-wide goal. So same thing for renewal, and retention is definitely a team effort from the analytics team to the account managers to the CSMs and everybody in dev. It's definitely a company-wide effort. So I think it's time for questions.
Yes, thank you, Isabelle. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jill. So go ahead and submit questions in the bottom left corner, but we've actually had tons of questions pour in. I'll let the two speakers review them. We probably can only take two, so why don't we get started? So from Isabelle, from your perspective as a practitioner, people want to know, okay, an account has gone red. What does your CSM do? What types of engagement activities do they take if something goes into red?
So the first step would be to look, why is it red? So usually if you have different metrics, you'll see which one are the issue. If it's a question of usage, we'll definitely propose an engagement strategy, maybe additional training, automated reporting. If it's for collection, we'll definitely present different methodologies or try to see, maybe engage other groups to increase the sample. And if it's a feature related or something technical, we'll definitely loop in the dev team because we have a very organic product evolution. So any dissatisfaction coming from a lack of features will be added to the roadmap. So those are, first of all, it's identifying why it's red and then going to the appropriate team to fix it.
Great, thank you. And then a lot of questions have come in around NPS and how does that factor into customer health. Jill, do you want to share Totango's point of view?
Sure. So, the questions are around, I think, whether NPS can be included in a customer health framework and score, and the answer is definitely yes. You should include it or can include it, and it's really a reflection of how your customers felt at the time of the survey. And so it's really part of customer sentiment, which, as we discussed earlier, is one of our secondary indicators. And for many companies, that's an important part in their framework. So yes, you definitely can include it, and many companies do.
Great, thank you. We have reached our full 30 minutes. I want to thank all of the participants for joining. On the screen, you'll see both ways to learn more about Totango and iPerceptions, as well as an email address for Totango and Isabelle's email address. I have captured all of the questions that have come in, and we will follow up with you guys. We might even do an FAQ based off of all of these great questions you have. Again, in case you missed it, in 6 weeks, we'll be doing part 2 of customer health around measuring the effectiveness of a customer health model, and you can learn more. And in the meantime, I just want to thank Jill and Isabelle for contributing both of their perspectives and expertise. Thank you both.